And it's K8BYP's new channel, Automotive Engineering for Mechanics and household mechanics and people into tech and people into engineering and everyone that owns vehicles. Lots of information online on YouTube about automotive. One of the better sources where I've seen some very good information is the S10 forum. However, God bless us, we're universally lacking in engineering knowledge, and this is what I specialize in. I can engineer every stick of everything that's electrical and electronic in this vehicle with my eyes shut. And today the old S10 is acting grumpy, shaking like a drunk at startup, cold. Wife complains, feels like the plug wires are wet. So, how to verify this? Spark plug problems in this case. Old 305,000 mile engine runs like a top if it's not misfiring. Started up the other day, running pretty rough. First cold start, I immediately ran to the back of the vehicle. The back is back there, where there are two exhaust pipes. This is a custom dual exhaust system. And I felt the outlet of the pipes. And the top pipe, I put my hand over it and it's gone nice and regular, kind of like a motorboat in the water. And the lower pipe is going pop, 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 pop. It ain't happy. So tracing the dual exhaust forward, that pipe that was going goes to the driver's side back of the engine, the odd cylinders, 1, 3, 5. It's a V6. So pulling El Sparco plugos out, we see this nasty surprise. Not horrible, a little heavy, a little rich, kind of, sort of. But this plug here was working on being black on the tip, and that's oil fouling. This one's from number 3. Number 3 had a valve guide seal leak. I took the valve cover off. I replaced valve guide seals 1 and 3. Like a big dummy, I didn't do 6. Shame on me. I'll regret that probably next year. But this plug was very dark. So I goes to my friends at O'Reilly Auto, which, by the way, are doing a pretty darn good job lately. I got some Autolite number 26 spark plugs and see an immediate strange problem. See the marking on the old spark plug, nice and black. Marking on new plug, faded, poorly marked gray. I've got to call into Autolite Engineering. Are these genuine spark plugs or are they counterfeit? First indication of counterfeit goods can be improper markings, and those markings are not very good. So that spark plug's clean. That's when I just told you it was nasty. What happened? Well, what happened is me and my friend muriatic acid know a trick for restoring old spark plugs. And Mr. Sparkplug is in Mr. Acid, and this plug was black, B-L-A-K. I'm going to shake the excess acid off, and I'm going to get the excess acid off this piece of paper on this piece of towel. See that tip? That tip was from number 6, which was badly oil fouled. It's white, and if you look on the tip of the porcelain, you see the problem. You see where the partially burned fuel, which is conductive, burned on and was arcing up the center electrode up the porcelain. Come back, focus. Up the porcelain to the inside of the shell, and it wasn't firing. And that's the breakdown, the arcing mechanism that results in misfire. But this acid has almost cleaned the spark plug like new. Remember the old days? The advice was take the spark plug out, use a wire brush on the porcelain. Don't ever do that. Reason is, this is a nylon brush, but assume this is metal. And we scrape that against porcelain. The porcelain is infinitely hard compared to the metal. And that risks scraping off pieces of metal and embedding that into the porcelain, and that can cause misfire because with enough metal on the porcelain, the spark energy has an easier time traveling along that surface of that electrode, the ceramic. And if there are metal fragments, that can shorten the arc path and cause arcing down the side of the porcelain. So our friend Acid and our friend from the kitchen, Baker's toothpick, thick for testing cakes and such. Take that and take the plug out of the acid and use this to scrape the deposits away, put it back in the acid. Okay, why do spark plugs foul? Spark plugs foul for basically 3 reasons: excess fuel. This is a fuel injected vehicle, computer controlled, running pretty much normally. Shouldn't be much more than a little yellowish. That's a little heavy, so to speak. The back here, kind of the whitish, yellowish, grayish is more normal. But black is caused by heavily excess fuel, which should not be occurring in a fuel injected vehicle, or oil from bad valve guide seals, or pumping oil past the piston rings, or especially with these GM conical seat spark plugs. Conical means that the contact between the shell, not the threads, but the shell and the head is tapered. Gives it more surface area. There's no gasket there. Some of the other flat contact areas had gaskets, metal sealing rings. No seal there. So easy for these to come loose, and if they do, especially on the back cylinders, if there's valve cover leakage and oil leaking, oil can be sucked in to the spark plug threads and cause contamination to be built up. And what's necessary, especially in vehicles maybe 100,000 miles or older, is to, let's see if I can drop the phone in here. Take Mr. Brush here, along with Mr. Brake Parts Cleaner, and spray that brush good and wet, and put it in there. Try not to scrape any contamination off from around the hole, but put that in the spark plug hole and clean that out, run it round and round. While that's in there and mostly blocking the hole, spray the cleaner down in to try to clean off the surface of the cylinder head. That being in the hole will avoid trying to blow the stuff in, but bring that out, rinse the tip of the brush off. You'll see nasty stuff come off. Do that till it comes out clean. In the 84 through 87 Honda Goldwings, I kid you not, dirty spark plug threads resulted in complete failure of the charging system, because the problem with dirty plug threads is not only does it make it difficult to get them out and put them in, but that's also the so-called ground for the high tension side of the ignition system. It's high voltage and low current, and that contamination tends to insulate the spark plug shell from the cylinder head, and it tends to break the contact for the spark plug circuit. That takes more arc voltage to overcome, and it reduces the spark energy. Very bad. Our well-meaning folks at O'Reilly said, "Do you need anti-seize with your spark plugs?" And I explained to him, never ever put anti-seize on spark plug threads. Never. You do that on aluminum heads and you'll see the death of the head. The reason is the spark plug was difficult to get out because it has not been changed at the proper interval. It's been in too long, or there's excess oil consumption in the cylinder, and the ends of the threads here have carbon deposits on them, and then trying to unscrew the spark plug tries to force the carbon deposits through the threads in the head. There's almost nothing you can do about that except pull the head. In some severe cases, if the spark plug won't come out, you may have to pull it. But the problem of dirty spark plug threads in the cylinder head is not solved by putting anti-seize on it. That only makes it worse. That anti-seize crap goes in the cylinder, it goes on side of the head, makes a mess. Nothing here needs lubrication. If the threads are seizing, it's because the threads in the head are dirty. Clean the threads. They've got to be clean for a good so-called ground for the spark plug anyway. Don't do this never seize nonsense. That's a lazy old mechanics fix. The material in the spark plug threads in the head that causes problem is partially burned oil. It's essentially carbon. It's very abrasive. If the stuff isn't cleaned out, repeatedly removing and putting plugs in is going to slowly wear the threads away. It results in galling, grinding material out of the threads in the head, because realize the head is iron or aluminum, and these threads are hardened steel. It's not going to wear this, and if it wears this spark plug's probably put in once, taken out once, and thrown away. It doesn't matter if the threads on this are damaged. Continuing to do that can literally destroy the threads in the cylinder head. So never put anti-seize on a spark plug thread. No manufacturer that I'm aware of since the 60s has ever put anti-seize on threads for a spark plug for a new vehicle. This is only a thing of old vehicles, and that old procedure is wrong. So ignore the old advice. Do not use a wire brush on the porcelain for any reason. Never. Never use anti-seize on spark plugs. Clean the threads in the cylinder head. Never use anything but oil light spark plugs. I wouldn't put Champion spark plugs in a doghouse. I've seen too many of them fail. Spark plugs have an internal resistance, at least these do. There are some that are non-resistor. But before installing spark plugs, get Mr. Ohm meter here and measure the resistance between the tip which contacts the coil wire and the center electrode pin down in here. And on these Autolite 26s for the 95S10 4.3Z, that resistance is about 4,000 ohms. For a interesting performance tip you won't find in the books, you'll only find here and maybe in the higher echelons of racing. The trick is to measure the resistance of the ignition coil secondary and then make the spark plug resistance about that same value, and make yourself a set of custom spark plug cables, all exactly the same length, and use stranded copper. Do not use resistor wire. You put 4,000 ohms in the spark plug resistance and add another 6,000 worth of resistor wire. Now you've killed the spark energy. Yeah, you bet the noise will be down on the radio. That's because the spark power has been cut way down, and that means poor combustion. Now, besides cleaning the spark plug threads in the head, see the shiny area of the seat there? Right here. There's a corresponding concave seat in the cylinder head, and it's going to be filthy. So what I did is I took the same extension and spark plug socket that I used to pull the spark plugs out. And by the way, make sure the rubber's in there, because if not, if you go and do this sharply and hit the porcelain, it can literally break the porcelain. So that rubber piece is in there not only to hold the spark plug in, but to prevent breaking the porcelain. But take this and stuff some heavy paper towel down in it with a wad of it sticking out, and spray that with carburetor cleaner or brake cleaner, and then take that down here to where the spark plug hole is. There's no spark plug in here now, but put that back in and press that against where that seat is and run it round and round to clean the debris off the seat, and then reach in with your fingers if possible and feel the seat and make sure it's clean. So I've got to do that with the other two. So there's today's skinny on spark plugs, maintenance, cleaning, etc. And one last tip, the ultimate survival tip, if you're using motor vehicles or boats with engines or such, outdoors, perhaps in a survival situation, and I have literally been there and done that. We were stranded on a lake in Minnesota, one of the 10,000 lakes, with a boat motor that wouldn't run because the spark plug was fouled. I took it out. It was much worse than this. I took it out, cleaned it off a bit, and put it back in. It ran. But another way to clean spark plugs, if you're in dire straits or just around a campfire at night and are bored, or you have a wood stove or fireplace in the house, is take the spark plug and get a good hot fire with red coals and ash at the base, and set the spark plug tip right in that white ash so it's just above the ash where air can flow up over the spark plug. And let that heat up and push it in till it's well up into the ash and just below where the red hot coals are. And what you'll see by magic is that the very high temperature and exposure to oxygen will clean all that carbon off the electrodes. Get it too close in, it'll simply overheat and bust the porcelain, and then spark plug's junk. But that high heat and the oxygen converts that carbon, those fuel deposits, into carbon dioxide, and they just blow away. And I have gotten spark plugs out of that process that were perfectly white, that look like this. So, ultimate emergency spark plug tip. There it is. First video on this channel about me. I've been wrenching on vehicles for 40 plus years. There have been years up until 2020. I've never had anything but old junk vehicles. I've always had to repair my own. I have oodles of engineering experience, including ignition system design and fuel system design, and some chemistry, mostly electrical and electronic engineering. So the advice I give you on this channel is from 40 plus years of experience, backed up by engineering and scientific theory, far beyond pretty much anyone except the engineers at the manufacturers or the higher echelons of racing like Top Fuel. Those people know far more than anyone because that's all they do. But on this channel, you'll find about the best information there is that's applicable for the mechanic. So happy wrenching, and hope this has given you some useful information.